Shaka's growing prowess, both physical and tactical, stirred a potent mix of admiration and fear within the Elangeni clan. His victory over the bull, whispered about and embellished with each retelling, coupled with the secret training he received from the elders, set him apart in ways that unnerved those comfortable with the old order. As he transitioned into young adulthood, his presence became a perceived threat to the established hierarchy and the ambitions of others. Nandi, Shaka's mother, strongly suspected that these problems were being orchestrated by Shaka's enemies in his father's household. Political machinations, fueled by envy and the lingering shame associated with his birth, began to tighten around him and Nandi like a noose. The whispers of outcast turned to murmurs of danger. The tension culminated in a calculated move. By those who felt threatened, faced with overt hostility and the very real possibility of assassination, Shaka and Nandi had no choice but to flee their homeland. The decision was sudden, desperate, and heart-wrenching, leaving behind the land of his ancestors, even one that had largely rejected him, was a bitter necessity. The night wind carried whispers through the tall grass. Nandi clutched Shaka's arm as they crouched in darkness, waiting for the search party to pass. At 20 seasons, Shaka had grown tall and powerful, his muscled frame hardened by years of persecution and hard labor. The moonlight caught the determination in his eyes, eyes that had seen too much cruelty for one so young. "They're coming closer," Nandi whispered, her voice barely audible above the rustling grass. Shaka closed his eyes, focusing his mind as he had learned to do when the voices of the ancestors grew strong. A tingling sensation spread from the base of his skull downward, and suddenly the night seemed alive with information. The distant footfalls of warriors, the clink of their assegais, even the frustrated breath of their leader. "Not this way," he murmured, gently guiding his mother in another direction. "The spirits say to move toward the river." Their flight from the Elangeni clan had begun 3 days earlier, when Shaka had discovered a plot to murder him. His growing reputation as a warrior and his uncanny abilities had finally pushed his enemies to action. Though he could have faced them in combat, the same mysterious voices that had guided him since childhood urged him to protect his mother and flee instead. "The time is not yet right for blood," they had told him. "First comes exile, then glory." Dawn broke over the savannah, painting the land in gold and amber. Shaka and Nandi had traveled through the night, putting distance between themselves and their pursuers. They paused at a small stream, where Nandi bathed her swollen feet while Shaka fashioned a crude spear from a branch. "We must reach Dingiswayo's territory before sunset," Shaka said, testing the spear's balance. "The Elangeni will not dare follow us there." Nandi looked at her son with pride mingled with sorrow. "I never wanted this life for you. Always running, always fighting. The ancestors have prepared me for this journey," Shaka replied, his voice carrying the certainty that had become his hallmark. "Last night in my dreams, I saw a great bull with spreading horns sheltering us. The Sangoma once told me Dingiswayo's spirit animal is the bull." "You and your dreams," Nandi smiled faintly. Though she had witnessed enough of Shaka's predictions coming true to believe in his connection to the spirit world, it still unnerved her how casually he spoke of such things. "We should continue." As they prepared to move on, Shaka suddenly froze, his eyes locked on something distant, his body tensing like a leopard before the pounce. "What is it?" Nandi whispered. "Hunters," Not Elangeni, different markings. Shaka's eyes narrowed. 5 of them, well armed. Nandi marveled at her son's perception. The hunters were not yet visible to her eyes. Can we avoid them? No, Shaka decided after a moment. They've seen our tracks. We must face them. The hunting party approached cautiously, their lean bodies adorned with the distinctive markings of the Kwabe clan, allies of the Mtetwa, but with their own history of territorial disputes. Their leader, a broad-shouldered man with piercing eyes, addressed them in a dialect similar to their own. "You travel with purpose through our hunting grounds," he observed, his gaze lingering on Shaka's powerful frame and the crude but effective weapon in his hand. "Where do you journey with such haste?" "We seek audience with Chief Dingiswayo of the Mtetwa," Shaka replied, his voice steady despite the danger. "I am Shaka, son of Senzangakona of the Zulu clan. This is my mother, Nandi." The name Senzangakona caused a ripple of murmurs among the hunters. Shaka's father's reputation extended beyond the borders of his small chiefdom. And why would the son of a Zulu chief travel like a fugitive? The leader pressed. Before Shaka could answer, a sudden gust of wind swept through the clearing, swirling dust into a spiraling column between them. Within the swirling dust, Nandi glimpsed the fleeting image of a warrior's face, gone in an instant, but the hunters had seen it too. They stepped back, eyes wide with superstitious fear. "In Yoka," one whispered, using the term for a person touched by spiritual power. Their leader studied Shaka with new respect. "The spirits walk with you. We will escort you to our boundary with the Mtetwa. From there you must make your own way." Shaka inclined his head in acceptance, though Nandi noticed how his fingers tightened around his makeshift spear. The voices had warned him of betrayal before. He would not lower his guard completely. The journey with the Kwabe hunters proved tense but uneventful. By midday, they had reached a ridge overlooking a vast expanse of territory belonging to the Mtetwa Confederation, the most powerful alliance in the region, led by the visionary King Dingiswayo. "There," the Kwabe leader pointed. "Follow the river valley to the large kraal visible on the eastern slope. That is where Dingiswayo holds court this season." As the hunters turned to leave, their leader paused, looking intently at Shaka. "There are stories about you, son of Senzangakona. They say when you were born, a comet crossed the sky. They say you hear voices of those long dead." He touched the protective amulet at his neck. "If even half the stories are true, your path will change many lives." Shaka met the man's gaze without flinching. "All men change the world around them. Some simply leave deeper footprints than others." The hunter nodded slowly, a flicker of unease crossing his features, before he turned to rejoin his companions. The final approach to Dingiswayo's kraal proved the most dangerous. Twice they encountered Elangeni scouts who had anticipated their destination and laid in wait. Both times, Shaka's exceptional awareness detected the ambush before they walked into it. During the second encounter, when 3 armed warriors accosted them, Shaka was forced to fight. Nandi watched in awe as her son moved with inhuman grace and speed. The crude spear in his hands became an extension of his body, whistling through the air with deadly precision. The fight lasted mere moments, ending with 2 warriors fleeing and 1 lying wounded. Shaka stood over the injured man, spear raised, for the killing blow. "Spare him," Nandi urged. "We need no blood feuds following us to our new home." For a terrible moment, Shaka's face remained impassive, his eyes distant as though listening to voices only he could hear. Then he lowered his weapon. "Tell those who sent you that Shaka, son of Senzangakona, walks a path laid by the ancestors themselves. Those who stand against me stand against the spirits of our fathers." The wounded warrior nodded frantically, clutching his bleeding arm. As they continued their journey, Nandi studied her son with a mixture of pride and concern. "What did they say to you, the ancestors, when you stood over that man?" Shaka's expression remained unreadable. "They showed me two paths, one red with blood, one tempered by wisdom. They did not tell me which to choose." He looked at his mother, his features softening slightly. "But you did." The sun was setting when they finally reached the impressive gates of Dingiswayo's royal kraal. The Mtetwa settlement sprawled across the hillside, far larger than any village of the Elangeni or even Senzangakona's Zulu clan. Hundreds of beehive-shaped huts stood in concentric circles around a central cattle enclosure. Warriors patrolled the perimeter, their discipline evident in their synchronized movements. At the gate, they were met by suspicious guards who crossed their spears to block entry. "State your business," commanded the lead guard, his elaborately decorated shield marking him as a warrior of high rank. "I am Shaka, son of Senzangakona of the Zulu clan. This is my mother Nandi. We seek audience with King Dingiswayo and the protection of the Mtetwa." The guard's expression remained skeptical until Nandi stepped forward, removing a small ivory pendant from around her neck, a gift from Senzangakona in their youth. "Tell your king that the woman who carries the royal ivory of the Zulu seeks his protection," she said with quiet dignity. "Tell him also that the prophecy of the comet child now stands before his gates." The mention of the prophecy caused a visible reaction among the guards. After a hurried consultation, the lead guard dispatched a messenger to the chief while keeping Shaka and Nandi waiting under close observation. As the minutes stretched into an hour, Shaka stood perfectly still, seemingly lost in thought. To Nandi's questioning look, he simply said, "The ancestors say this place will become important to us. I'm listening to their memories of these grounds." Finally, the messenger returned with orders to escort them into their king's presence. The great meeting hut of King Dingiswayo was illuminated by dozens of fat-burning lamps, casting flickering shadows across the faces of assembled advisors and clan elders. At the center, seated on a raised platform covered in leopard skins, sat Dingiswayo himself, a man in his prime, with intelligent eyes and the bearing of one accustomed to command. As Shaka and Nandi were led forward, a murmur ran through the assembled dignitaries. Dingiswayo leaned forward, studying the young man before him with undisguised interest. "So," the king said, his deep voice filling the hut, "this is the comet child." He turned to an elderly man seated at his right, a Sangoma whose face was painted with white clay patterns. "You were right to advise me to expect them, Nobella," the old Sangoma nodded sagely. "The bones never lie, my king. The spirits have guided this young lion to your kraal for a purpose." Dingiswayo returned his attention to Shaka. "I know of your father. I know also of your trials among the Elangeni. What I do not know is why I should grant you refuge. The Elangeni may be a small clan, but offering you protection could be seen as provocation." Before Shaka could respond, a strange stillness fell over the hut. The flames of the lamps dimmed momentarily, then flared brighter than before. Many of the assembled elders shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the signs of spiritual presence. Shaka stepped forward, and when he spoke, his voice carried an authority beyond his years. "Great King of the Mtetwa, the spirits of your ancestors, and mine have been in council. They have shown me that our paths are meant to intertwine. Grant us protection, and in return, I will serve you with loyalty that will become legend. My arm will be your arm, my blood your blood." He paused, then added with quiet certainty, "A time of great change approaches for all our peoples. Together, we can shape that change. Apart, we will be swept away by it." The hut remained silent after Shaka's words. Dingiswayo exchanged glances with his Sangoma, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. "Bold words from one so young," Dingiswayo finally said, "yet I sense truth in them." He rose from his seat, approaching Shaka. "I will grant you and your mother protection among them Tetwa. In return, you will join my regiments and prove the worth of your words through deeds." He extended his hand, and Shaka clasped it firmly, a gesture of respect between equals that did not go unnoticed by the watching elders. "The ancestors have whispered of you for many seasons," Dingiswayo said quietly, so that only Shaka could hear. "I have waited to see if their words were true. Now I know they are." He raised his voice for all to hear. "Tonight, we welcome Shaka and Nandi of the Zulu into our protection. Let a hut be prepared and food brought." As the assembly broke into formal welcoming rituals, Nandi moved to her son's side. "What happens now?" she whispered. Shaka watched Dingiswayo return to his seat, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Now, mother, I learn. I grow stronger, and when the time is right, the spirits will guide us home, not as exiles, but as conquerors." Outside the great hut, thunder rolled across distant hills, as though the ancestors themselves were signaling their approval of the alliance that would change the face of southern Africa forever.